Welcome to the South Australian Drought Hub podcast, strengthening drought resilience for our farmers and regional communities.
Not so long ago, decisions on how much to irrigate a crop were based on experience and observation. Now, science is part of the mix, and it can help producers save both time and money. G'day, I'm Drew Radford, and the science involves monitoring crops via remote sensing technology. While it's not that new, it is, however, getting cheaper and easier to use. Helping farmers adopt it is Michael Cutting. He's team leader of land and water management at Landscape SA. Their work's being assisted by SA Drought Hub. And to find out more, he joins me now. Michael, thanks for your time.
It's a good pleasure to do it, Drew.
Michael, for those unfamiliar, Landscape SA. What is Landscape SA? What's their role?
Landscape SA has replaced the former Natural Resource Management Boards in South Australia, so that changeover occurred on the 1st of July 2020. And we've got responsibility for natural resource management across the state with a particular focus on managing our water biodiversity and soil management across the state. So there's 8 landscape boards and also Green Adelaide, which covers metropolitan Adelaide.
So what's your role within that, Michael?
So my role is team leader land and water management. In layman terms, it's really sustainable agriculture. In our region, which is the Murraylands and Riverland, the River Murray is a key feature. So we have quite a strong focus on water management when we talk about sustainable agricultural systems. But we've also got a fairly large dryland agriculture sector, but about 80% of the region's used for primary production. So sustainable agriculture is a really key focus for our particular landscape board.
And central to that, I understand, is delivering irrigation efficiency programs. And to do that, I imagine understanding how the water is used is fundamental. So how do you go about that?
Yeah, it's probably evolved over time. Probably the thing that we've noticed over that time is the evolution of technologies really evolved. So when it comes to extension adoption, we've obviously needed to evolve with that. So we've gone from fairly basic knowledge and awareness programs back probably 10, 15 years ago, which talked about soil moisture monitoring probes, to sort of where we are today, which we're really seeing some cutting edge technology that's available to producers. But one thing that's remained constant and consistent over that time is the challenge around adoption. So there's no shortage of tools and techniques and technology that exist in the marketplace, but we need to work with our end users to ensure that they adopt that and have the confidence to adopt that, more importantly, so that they can see the value that can provide for their business and give them some sustainability moving forward in what can be challenging times from a water availability and climatic conditions as we're sort of seeing right now.
Michael, central to the work that you're doing is the Murray, Mallee and Riverland Irrigation Analytics and Optimisation project. It's quite a mouthful. In summary, what is it?
It's a project which aims to optimise water use efficiency and productivity. So we've worked across multiple crop types. So we've done both annual cropping out in the Mallee, also some tree cropping. Not there's much tree cropping out in the Mallee, but we've worked with some pistachio growers out around Pabinga. And then we've also done to work with some almond producers in the Riverland. But yeah, very much the focus of the project is around optimising water use.
So, Michael, I understand one of the key tools you use is hyperspectral imaging. What is that?
Yes, it's a remote sensing-based system. It looks at different reflectances from crops, so irrigated crops. They don't need to be irrigated. They could have application in the dryland system. There's a lot of technology that goes behind it. It's simply the output of it might be a colour-coded map which shows you green for areas of crop that are performing quite well and red for areas that might be under stress. So it's a sort of a relativity thing in terms of looking at areas that have high vigour and sort of performing well versus areas that have low vigour, and might be an area for investigation as to why it's performing the way it is.
So does that let you drill down even to subsections or even plants within a paddock?
Yeah, it does. So in a tree crop, you can actually drill in individually and generate those colour codes I referred to. So you might have a row of trees. Some of them might be showing green and some of them might show red. So an example of why that might be the case, it might just simply be a drop block gripper, but you can actually see that down to the individual tree level. So that's very high resolution imagery that allows you to do that and also troubleshoot as to why you've got underperforming areas, and obviously look at how you can optimise water use so that everything's performing uniformly and productively across the farm.
And is this real-time data, or is it something you get once a week, or does it depend upon your subscription?
Yeah, it depends upon the system. So the particular system that we're using is actually captured through fixed-wing aircraft. So that's quite different in the sense that with other satellite-based systems, it's really a product of how often that satellite goes across your areas. Often that might be a 7 to 10 day sort of turnaround before you get another imagery. I guess with the aircraft-based system, you can do it as often as you want, but that needs to be sort of married up with what's affordable as well, and being realistic about what's going to change in terms of imagery. So there's little point in capturing something every week because chances are it's not going to change a whole lot from the week before. So we sort of work on sort of maybe a flight once a month, although it might be a little bit more regular at peak times of the season. But in tree crops and vines, you might get 6 or 8 images a year at strategic times.
You mentioned tree crops and vines. Other crops as well?
Yeah, so it has broader application. So we've done work with annual crops, so potatoes as well out in the Mallee. Some of the value adds to it. So when I say value adds, so there's data layers that form the core of the product, but then there's some calculations or derived products that come from that. And one of the tools that we've used more recently is what they refer to as irrigation optimisation. So when I was referring to those water demand maps before in the generation of crop coefficients. So the idea behind that is that the crop coefficients are generated based on the spectral imagery, and then it's applied with the 7-day forecast to say, well, in the next 7 days, based on the forecast and the state of growth that your crop's currently in, we forecast that you'll require X amount of water to keep that crop growing healthily over that next period. So it's very useful in the sense that it's predictive. So one of the challenges with some technology, before you sort of see the problem, it might be a little bit too late. So it allows you to sort of get on the front foot and know what's coming up in terms of water requirements. That technology I refer to in terms of the tool, irrigation optimisation, does work much better in permanent tree and vine crops as opposed to annual crops, which don't have that density of growth. So it's certainly something that does work better in tree and vines, but it does have broad application generally. So the base layers that are produced through the spectral imagery can be used regardless of what crop you're irrigating.
You've outlined some very key uses. Let's say a tree's been underwatered, you can identify that. But I imagine central to this is efficiency, saving money on water, really only putting in what you need. Is that why this is an important project to the region?
Ultimately, that's sort of what all our projects, the end game is. So water availability in an irrigated system is very critical. So we look at, how can we be well adapted to challenging conditions moving forward, because they'll come. So in the River Murray, for example, no doubt there'll be another period of drought and low water availability. So how do we optimise our water use irrespective of whether we're in sort of plentiful times or challenging times? And very much it's driven by the need to be as efficient as we can with our water resources, even out in the Mallee. So as much as that water resource is underground and it's not necessarily limited, it costs the growers a lot of money to extract that from depth. So they don't want to be pumping any more water than they have to. So it's very much a water use efficiency as well as a productivity and profitability aspect that we're coming from.
Michael, one of the core goals of the SA Drought Hub is the extension and adoption of new knowledge to improve drought resilience. Now, you said earlier on that this is not particularly new technology, but is the extension part the new part of what you're doing?
Yes and no. I think extension has always been a strong focus of ours. And I think from a landscape board perspective, one of the benefits that we do have as an organisation is we come sort of with that independence. We don't sell product. So we're keen to sort of really provide exposure to what's out there, because if people don't have an awareness of a product existing or a technology existing, then it's going to be hard to see that adoption occur. So
how then have you been working to extend the technology and see its adoption?
So the first step here is actually getting some sites set up on the ground. So that's sort of what we've already done, and then gathering some quantifiable information that we can then go out and run workshops We can also develop case studies with the growers involved, because it always carries a lot more weight if it's coming from the growers that are involved, because we can say that this product works really well, but that's so well and good that we're not out there actually watering a crop like the end users are. So we always feel that it's important that we develop case studies that provide that grower perspective, because that always carries a lot more weight. And that's something we're doing through this particular project, and the SA Drought Hub's been really helpful in enabling that to happen through this particular project, because it's really important that an extension side of things goes hand in hand with adoption. So we need to do extension well in order to get adoption, and the adoption piece is where we see the gains on the ground. So it's really important that we make that happen.
I understand you've also been doing some extension training.
Extension is challenging. I think it's something you need to tailor. We've sort of seen a bit of an evolution. The days of running workshops and getting 30, 40 people into a room for 3 or 4 hours, I'm not saying they're done, but it's getting more challenging to get people off farm. So we've got to think about how we do our extension, and doing exactly what we're doing right now, I think, is a key part of that. I think we learned a lot of lessons through COVID. So as much as we took ourselves sort of off farm, like the ability to actually go out on farm during COVID was quite limited. So we had to look at these online tools, and I think they certainly have a role to play going forward. And we find that a lot of farmers that spend a lot of time on tractors and have that time to listen to things like podcasts and sit down after they knock off at work and jump in front of the computer and look at a case study, for example, as opposed to those workshops where you draw a critical mass. I think there's still a role for that to happen. And if the topic has interest, you'll still get people there. But we are noticing that people are increasingly time poor, and we need to tailor our extension approaches with that in mind.
So what sort of training have you and your team done to maximise your extension success?
We've been through the Facilitating Learning and Change workshop, which was delivered by Jeanette Long. So our team's been involved, and that was really useful. Jeanette brings a huge amount of knowledge in that extension space. We've also been involved in some behavioural science work, which was done by Wine Australia a few years ago. They had a particular focus on Riverland wine growers, and it looked into some of the behavioural aspects of why people uptake or don't uptake technology or sustain. This one had a particular focus on sustainability programs, but it did still have that extension and adoption component to it. And that was quite interesting, really, because I think when you get involved in those sort of behavioural science approaches, you do get a greater appreciation of how that can actually inform you to do extension better. We're also currently involved in a project with the One Basin CRC, so that's a fairly new funding initiative, but they've got a focus on, or a project that's focused on digital ag tech extension and advisory. So I think there's recognition that extension and adoption is a challenging thing to do, and there's a bit of investment being put into projects to enable us to do that better, and we're sort of all ears for that. We understand or see that our key role out in the region is to provide that extension and adoption service. We bring that independence, so I think we can do that role well, but we also recognise the need to upskill and ensure that the approaches that we're using are effective.
Beyond that, what are the challenges with the uptake of the technology?
One of the things I personally observe, and I'd like to see more emphasis placed on this, is doing that sort of value proposition a bit better. So it's well and good to go out there and say this product's going to work for you, but often we get asked, well, show us the numbers. What does it mean for my business? How is it going to make me more productive and profitable? That sort of thing. And sometimes that information's lacking, I think. And I think it's really important to have that quantifiable information, because like it or not, people need to make a dollar, and we need to be able to demonstrate that adopting this technology enables them to do that. And I think that's sort of one of the things we're keen to focus on. We've got a few different demonstration sites happening out in the region at the moment. We're about to start a new project funded through the Australian government, which has a focus on climate smart agriculture. So we see technology as being a key part of that broader climate smart agriculture objective, and through those demonstration sites. So that project's been funded for the next 3.5 years. So we've got some good time frames around gathering some data and how we convert data into a decision support system so that people can be more sustainable and productive with their water use.
You're alluding to it there, but I imagine there's some key partnerships that have helped with this project.
The obvious one is the SA Drought Hub. I mean, they have that clear focus on the extension side of things. We've also done some work through the One Basin CRC. That's a 10-year investment program. So it's fairly unique in the sense that you don't often get funding programs that have that longevity, which allow you to sort of, I guess, monitor the outcome of projects over a longer period of time. And the Drought Hub is the same in the sense that you've got that longevity of funding, and Future Drought Fund has been a really important program. It's got lots of different aspects to it, but they're all underpinned by that sort of end goal of increasing that resilience and sustainability of our farming communities, which is sort of our core business as a program as well. So our land and water management program is about finding that balance between productive water use and achieving that sustainability outcome as well.
Lastly, Michael, what are the key messages you'd like to leave with irrigators who want to improve their water optimisation?
Find out greater awareness around what's actually available in the marketplace, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. So we certainly encourage people to use multiple tools. So we've spoken today about the spectral imaging and the benefits that can provide, but from our perspective, we just want to see people using a system that informs their water use. So whether that's a soil moisture probe, whether that's a local weather station, just be aware that there's these tools that can help you to make an informed decision around your water management. So one of the challenges is that integrating, there's lots of tools in the marketplace, but sometimes they're not well integrated, but that is something that's being looked at. So there's some good systems out there that enable you to integrate both what we're referring to here in terms of the remote sensing based applications, bringing in local weather data, bringing in your soil moisture data. So I think that's one area where we've seen a big improvement in the ag tech, that integration piece. It's still work to be done, but that has definitely improved more recently.
Michael Cutting, Team Leader with Land and Water Management at Landscape SA. Thank you so much for joining us for this SA Drought Hub podcast.
No worries, Drew. Thanks for having me.
And that concludes this podcast. You'll find more podcasts on the SA Drought Hub website at sadroughthub.com.au. The South Australian Drought Resilience Adoption and Innovation Hub is one of 8 hubs established across the nation through the Australian Government's Future Drought Fund. The SA Drought Hub is an exciting initiative which brings together a dynamic network of primary producers, industry groups, researchers, government agencies, universities, agribusinesses, farming systems groups, traditional owners and others to work towards a common vision to strengthen the drought resilience and preparedness of farms and regional communities in SA. Led by the University of Adelaide in partnership with the Department of Primary Industries and Regions South Australia, the Hub is responsible for driving the extension of existing knowledge and practices to build drought resilience in primary production systems.